Am I the asshole for what I said after my husband commented on my flat chest? My husband, Jared, and I have been married for 3 years. He's currently out of work, used to work at a high-paying job, but got kicked out of the company over a fight with a coworker, and I'm the one paying for rent and utilities. We dedicate some time to seeing his family weekly. They don't know he's unemployed because he thought they'll see him as a failure, especially his mom, so he told me to keep it a secret. Last night, we were sitting, eating dinner at the table. His cousin was talking about his fiancée going to Brazil to do a boob job. Jared asked if he was serious, then flattered future sister-in-law's boobs, saying they're perfect and that he didn't understand why she'd get a boob job. He then turned to me, stared at my chest while I was eating. I have a flat chest. I'm insecure about it, but don't do anything about it, obviously, and said, quote, "Hey, why don't you get a boob job? You're the one who needs it the most." His mom gasped and was like, "Jared." I then turned to him and said, quote, "I'll get a boob job once you get an actual job since you've been unemployed for 6 months now." He stared at me in
Honestly,
disbelief.
like he deserves it.
His mom began questioning him about being unemployed, and he denied. Then
He kept lying.
admitted it was true. It got awkward with his mom scolding him and others shaming him for it and for hiding it. He got so overwhelmed he went outside and stayed inside the car until I came out. He started yelling at me repeatedly, quote, "You couldn't have held your f***ing tongue." I argued that his comment about my chest was insulting, but he said he was giving me a piece of advice and that there's nothing wrong with him wanting me to look pretty and that he said what he said.
So he doesn't think she looks pretty?
He said what he said out of support and encouragement, but what I did was the complete opposite, and that it was intended to hurt him, and I succeeded. I called him later thinking he calmed down, but his friend said he didn't want to speak to me and I should give him space.
Story time on why I don't like using the word crazy and why I think it's way too dismissive. Submitted by Rochelle. This happened 8 years ago, but it still gives me the creeps. I was a new college student going to community college while living with my parents at the time. I had planned to go to a 4-year college when I was finished, but I was gracefully taking my time. While I was attending school, I decided to rekindle an old friendship from high school with a girl named Ariel. Ariel was super chill, and she got along great with my parents, me, and our other friends. She had 2 brothers who treated her like a piece of porcelain, and I remember often being jealous because I was an only child. Either way, I spent a lot of time at her house, and her family always felt like my family, so good vibes all around. Ariel's mom was a veterinarian, so she spent a lot of time with animals. If she wasn't working with them, she was busy rescuing them and sending them to their forever homes. This made her my mom's best friend, as my mom was one of the forever homes that Ariel's mom assigned our family dog to. Her dad, on the other hand, was off on disability, so he spent most of his time at home. He did, however, spend a lot of time with the community, as he organized community service events and helped with the local paper. He designed quite a few routes, and I learned from Ariel that he used to be in construction and worked as a landscaper. I never asked her what his disability was, but boy was I about to find out. I never asked about Ariel's father's disability because I felt like it was none of my business, but I always just assumed that it had something to do with his construction work. Even though he was always pleasant to be around, I always noticed him muttering to himself in ways that made me feel like he was super distracted, even when there was no one else around. I chalked it up to anxiety or just being preoccupied with his own thoughts. My mom did it all the time, especially when she was mad at my dad. Things got a little bit more interesting one day when my parents and I were sitting down for dinner. My mom asked what Ariel's father's disability was, and I instantly responded with, "I don't know," hoping that would end the conversation there. However, my father spoke up gently to say that Ariel's father had attempted to ease his pain with medications a few years ago, and had Ariel's mother not been home when she was, he didn't believe that Ariel's father would have made it. I won't lie, I cried. A part of me felt like an intruder for knowing that information, and my heart went out for Ariel and her family. Even though I continued to hang out with Ariel and her family with no issues, I never brought up what I knew, and even asked her if she wanted to be roommates when we went off to college. She liked the idea, and we made plans to fully flesh it out that night by having a small get-together at her house. I bought drinks, her mom cooked, her dad and her brothers grilled, and Ariel and I just chopped it up like we always did. This is when things took a bit of a turn. Halfway through the gathering, while everyone was talking, Ariel's dad came up to me calmly with his drink and asked if he could talk to me in the other room. I said sure, assuming that he was going to ask me about college plans. But when we got there, his look was very concerned, so I started to think that maybe I had done something wrong. "Rochelle, I don't mean to scare you, but I've been helping your neighbor Meredith with her patio for the past few weeks now, and last night I noticed a man near your house. He was coming toward me from the opposite direction, and when I looked closer at him, I realized that he had no hands. I don't usually see anyone out that late, so I was genuinely shocked. I didn't know what to do, so I just froze. He literally floated right past me." He widened his eyes as if he were reliving it all over again, and then looked me dead in my face and said, "It was a reaper. I just know it. I thought you should know." He blinked a few times again, and all I could do was nod, pick my jaw up off the floor, and mutter a "thanks for telling me," while I returned to the party as if nothing ever happened. I ended up telling Ariel later that night, and I can tell she was embarrassed. All she said was, "Don't mind my dad. He's crazy, you know," and left it at that. I was frustrated that she dismissed it that way, but we never spoke about it again. Eventually, I moved out to attend college, and Ariel continued to stay with her parents for another year before joining me. We lived together for 4 years until I moved out with my boyfriend, who is now my husband, and we kind of lost touch with her. The only reason I'm thinking of this story now is because Ariel called last week. According to her, my old neighbor, a middle-aged woman that I had only seen on 3 occasions, was recently arrested. Apparently, they had found a body buried in her backyard while setting the foundation for a pool for the new owners. The stories claim that he was her abusive boyfriend whom she had tried to get away from for years. However, that wasn't the part that got me. What really got me was that she admitted before she buried him, she cut off his hands so that he would never be able to hurt anyone else again. So be careful who you call crazy.
Hi, my name is Mimi. My dad used to be a construction worker. He passed away after an accident at work. At that time, my mom was a housewife. After my dad's passing, she had to find a way to make money. She started to clean people's houses. It was hard work, but it paid our rent and bills. Unfortunately, my mom started having problems with her eyes and lost 60% of her sight. It affected her work. People didn't want to hire her anymore. Soon we ran out of money. We couldn't pay our rent. To buy food, we had to start selling our furniture. Eventually, the thing we feared most happened and we got evicted. My mom and I started living on the streets. I learned that when you're desperate, you get used to anything. I used to feel shy asking my dad for pocket money. Now I had no problem coming up to strangers and asking, "Do you have any change? My mom and I haven't eaten since yesterday." We were actually hungry and needed every penny we could get. We slept in the park. My mom tried her best to keep my spirits up. She would say, "Honey, please don't let this get you down. Think of it as camping. Your dad is watching us from above. If you're sad, he'll be sad too. We're a family. Families have good days and bad days. These days will pass." One day, as I was panhandling, a luxury car stopped in front of me. The man in the back seat asked, "Do you have parents?" "I have a mom," I said. "Take me to her. I have an offer for both of you," he said, catching me by surprise. When I looked inside the car, I saw a girl about my age. She was crying. When the man saw the worried look on my face, he said, "Don't be scared. This is my daughter. You'll soon find out what this is all about." I took them to my mom. The man told us, "My name is Kevin McCarthy, and this is my spoiled daughter, Yasmin. I'm in the oil and gas business. I am a billionaire, but I haven't done a good job of raising my daughter. For her birthday, I gave her a plane. You know what she said? It's too small." He turned to my mom and said, "My daughter doesn't appreciate what she has. Let's have our daughter switch places for a week. Yasmin will live with you in the park, and meanwhile, your daughter will live in my house. In exchange, I will buy you a house." Let's have our daughter switch places for a week. Yasmin will live with you in the park, and meanwhile, your daughter will live in my house. In exchange, I will buy you a house. I knew my mom wouldn't like this idea. Before she could say anything, I said, "Mom, please say yes. I'll switch places with Yasmin for a week. This would be good for both of us." My mom said, "You would be living with strangers. I don't think it's a good idea." "Mom, please, it's only for a week and then we won't be homeless anymore. We can't miss this opportunity," I pleaded with her. My mom wasn't convinced, but she said yes because she didn't want to upset me. Yasmin could see that her father was serious. She got even more upset. "Dad, I cannot live here. These people stink. Do you think this is the life your daughter deserves? You were always scared of me being kidnapped for ransom. What if they kidnap me?" But her father wouldn't hear of it. He said, "You need this experience. I'm sure you'll finally learn a thing or two. Don't worry about getting kidnapped. The bodyguards will be watching you, but you won't see them. And you'd better start being nice to this lady because she's going to be your mom for a week." I was upset that Yasmin said we stank. I handed her the cup I was holding. "You'll need this when you're panhandling. Tell them you're hungry. That's the only thing that works. And you will actually be hungry. By the way, you better get used to our smell because starting tomorrow you will smell just like us," I said. Mr. McCarthy seemed to like what I said. He told Yasmin, "Being homeless will teach you a lot. Look, you've already learned something," and laughed. Then he turned to me. "Young lady, we can go whenever you're ready. You will be our daughter for a week. I'm sure you'll like it." I wasn't very comfortable with the idea of leaving my mom at the park, but I kept thinking about the fact that after a week, we wouldn't be homeless anymore. We drove for an hour before arriving at the mansion. It was in the middle of a large property. It was the biggest house I'd ever seen. There were 2 smaller buildings next to it. I would later find out that one of them was for the staff and the other for clothes. The family had so much clothing that they needed a whole building to store it. A woman welcomed us at the entrance. This was Miss Samantha, who was in charge of managing the residence. Mr. McCarthy said, "Mimi will be our guest for a week. Treat her just like you would Yasmin." It was the biggest house I'd ever seen. There were 2 smaller buildings next to it. I would later find out that one of them was for the staff and the other for clothes. The family had so much clothing that they needed a whole building to store it. A woman welcomed us at the entrance. This was Miss Samantha, who was in charge of managing the residence. Mr. McCarthy said, "Mimi will be our guest for a week. Treat her just like you would Yasmin." Miss Samantha took me to Yasmin's room. It was even more lavish than I'd imagined. As I looked around in awe, Miss Samantha asked, "Would you like to take a shower?" Of course I did. I spent so much time in the shower that Miss Samantha had to knock on my door and ask, "Is everything okay in there?" She had prepared pajamas for me. I put them on and went to bed. It'd been a while since I slept in a regular bed. However, I felt sad when I looked up and saw the ceiling instead of the stars. I'd gotten used to falling asleep looking at the sky. I wondered what my mom was doing. I was sure she was thinking about me at that moment. It was only the first night I was spending without her, and I was missing her already. Next morning after breakfast, Miss Samantha took me to the wardrobe building. Yasmin's clothes took up an entire floor. I was so surprised that I screamed, "She has so many clothes!" Miss Samantha said, "Yasmin wears each outfit only once. It's her mother's wish." "Why?" I asked. "So that her mother can buy her more clothes," she replied. This sounded weird to me, but I didn't say anything. "Will I be meeting Yasmin's mother?" I asked. "Unfortunately, she's traveling for work at the moment. She's only home 3 days a month," she said. When I heard that, I felt sad for Yasmin. Seeing my mom only 3 days a month would never be enough for me. The next evening, Yasmin's dad took me out to dinner. When we walked in the restaurant, I couldn't believe my eyes. We were the only customers there. The entire staff was there just for us. This 5-star restaurant was closed to the public. When I asked why, Mr. McCarthy sighed. "You might think that being rich is amazing, but this life has its challenges. You can't just go out to dinner like normal people. You have to pay to reserve the whole restaurant, so we're the only people here. Firstly, it's for our safety. Wealthy people have a lot of enemies. But also it's because people constantly ask us for money. We can't just go out to dinner like normal people. You have to pay to reserve the whole restaurant, so we're the only people here. Firstly, it's for our safety. Wealthy people have a lot of enemies. But also it's because people constantly ask us for money. Charities, NGOs, entrepreneurs, you name it, everyone wants to get money from us. So if there were other people here, we wouldn't be able to have dinner in peace." After that evening, I never saw Yasmin's dad at home again. He had to travel for work all the time as well. When I first met Yasmin, I thought she was a spoiled brat, but when I realized what her life was actually like, I started to feel sorry for her. Money obviously makes life easier, but if you value family life like me, being a billionaire is not something to envy. Days went by very slowly. I missed my mom so much. Finally, the week was up. I was so excited when I woke up. Miss Samantha came in and said, "Yasmin's mother came home last night. She will take you to your mother." Yasmin's mother and I got in the car. She said to me, "Thanks so much for helping us out. Yasmin needed this experience. I'm sure she learned what a gift it is to be wealthy after seeing what it's like to be homeless. I bet she'll start crying the second she sees me and say, 'Mom, get me out of here.'" We got to the park and got out of the car. We started walking. We saw my mom and Yasmin having breakfast on the grass. They were chatting and laughing. When my mom saw me, she got up and embraced me. We hugged for a long time. She smelled awful, but I missed that stink. Yasmin also gave me a hug and said, "The week just flew by. Mimi, you are so lucky. You have an amazing mom." She also stank like a homeless person now. Yasmin's mother told my mom, "Thank you for looking out for my daughter." But she seemed to be disappointed. She had expected Yasmin to be desperate, but in fact, she looked really happy. She said, "Honey, Aren't you happy to see me? I missed you so much. When Yasmin didn't respond, she laughed and said, well, maybe you haven't missed me, but I'm sure you've missed your old life. Yasmin got upset. Mom, I don't think you missed me. When was the last time you, Dad, and I had dinner together? I can't even remember. Maybe you haven't missed me, but I'm sure you've missed your old life. Yasmin got upset. Mom, I don't think you missed me. When was the last time you, Dad, and I had dinner together? I can't even remember. I don't think the three of us have sat at the same table in years. I haven't missed my normal life at all. I had the best meals of my life in this park. I hadn't slept this well in a long time. You know what I realized out here? The only thing a person my age needs is parents who are paying attention to them. Now Yasmin's mother was mad. How can you be so ungrateful? Your father and I give you everything. You got a plane for your birthday. What else can we do for you? She screamed. Yasmin started crying. Mom, you're only giving me those gifts out of guilt. I got used to equating your gifts with love. I kept asking for more expensive gifts to be able to convince myself that you loved me, but now I understand what I really need is a mother who is always with me, just like Mimi's mom. Yasmin's mother stopped. She looked at her daughter's face. She knew what she was talking about. She started crying. She embraced Yasmin. You're right, honey. You're right. I'm such an idiot for not seeing that sooner. Please forgive me, she said. They hugged each other and cried for a while. Mr. McCarthy bought us a house, just like he promised he would. He even gave my mom a job in one of his companies. Our money troubles are over. My mom could finally afford a visit to the ophthalmologist. After 2 surgeries, she regained her eyesight. Now she can see as well as she used to. Yasmin and I became friends. She comes to visit a few times a week. Sometimes her mom comes with her. She took another job at the company. She doesn't travel anymore. She is now able to spend more time with her daughter. Yasmin's dad seems to have understood his mistake as well. Even if he needs to travel for work, he comes home whenever he can, and they have long family dinners together. They invited us to their house for Thanksgiving. They all looked very happy. Yasmin's dad thanked us by saying, people measure wealth with money, but real wealth is about the things in life that you cannot buy with money. In that way, they were actually very poor. Thanks for helping us figure it out. And this made us very happy.